Here to tell us how to maximize DR results before testing even begins, from Home Run Media, Andrew Blickstein.
Biggest reception I've ever had, thank you. So, hi, I'm here to tell you how to save money on a media test, in short. And let's get this going. A little bit about who I am. What you see on the screen is demographically who I am, but let me tell you a little bit about psychographically who I am, and that'll come into play a little bit later on in my presentation. I believe that the key to growth is sharing, and I'm very passionate about growth. It's my mission to engage people to learn and grow, and that's why I'm here today sharing this with you. So, one thing that we always look at as we talk about testing is what can we learn before we spend any media dollars? And there are a few key things that we can learn before spending media dollars. The first one is just to talk about testing in general, which is testing is all about controls and managing controls. The more controls that we can keep in place, the less variables in a test, the more reliable the results are going to be. So what are some variables in a test? Well, we can test TV networks, we can test day parts, we can test programming, and that would be an example of a media test. We can test creative, so whether it's a male versus female offer, whether it's a 60-second spot versus a 120-second spot, or even an infomercial in some cases. And we can test offer. An offer usually has to do with dollars, so whether it's two payments of $19.95 or two payments of $29.95, one payment of $50. Those are examples of testing offer. What we want to do to help maximize results is really do a lot of research up front to eliminate the media variable. So what we want to find out is who the target consumer is for your product or service, where we can find them, and also if you have competitors in this market, what your competitors are already doing as well. So again, we ask the question, what can I learn before I spend any media dollars? And what we can learn quite a few things through research. What we really want to do is build a profile so we can key in on who your target consumer is and what they do. So when we build a profile, we use a lot of qualifying questions with our research tools. An example might be, how many times a week does someone drink soda? Or what are their attitudes towards borrowing money? Or do they commute more than 30 minutes a week to work? And all of these things start to help us build a profile. One of the things we actually like to do is create Facebook profiles and hang them around the office. So we might say, here's Marcy and Sam and Lindsay, and would Marcy really interact with this? So when we look at Facebook profiles, it starts to get us to peek into what they do demographically, in addition to psychographics. So we'll start to understand that they post about certain TV shows, or they talk about their kids. Once we build the target profile, the first piece of data that kicks out is demographic. And demographic is what we've been buying off of for years. An example of demographic would be a person's age, how old they are. That's a great example of a demographic. Next would be a person's income, but there's also, do they have kids? Where do they live? What race are they? These are the traditional buying metrics that we buy off of all the time. We've been buying them for 60 or 70 years when buying media. Another important layer that we'd like to look at is psychographics. And this is where a lot of the color comes in. And the way that we tell people to think about psychographics is, what else do they do? So demographically, it's their age, race. Psychographically, what do these consumers like to do? Because that's going to give us a lot more information about your product. So for instance, if it's a weight loss product, we can assume the target is women 35 to 54 with a household income of such and such and such and such. But the real question is, do these people want to lose weight? We can also look at other factors. If it's a financial product, how do they feel about borrowing money? Do they pack a lunch every day? What are their attitudes towards soft drinks or healthy eating? So all of these are important factors in looking at what else they do. There's always fun stuff that kicks out too. So one of the things that kicks out always is pet ownership. So a key that we've learned over time is that people who want to lose weight tend to own cats, and people who gamble tend to own dogs. But there's always fun stuff that kicks out. Why are these important? Who really cares about this? Well, it's important because it's relevant to your consumer. These things are what your consumer looks at and does for your particular target product. And if it's relevant to your consumer, we feel it's relevant to you. So one thing that we want to talk about is the ideal target size. When we're building these profiles, we try and look at how many Americans, if we're talking about an American distribution, how many Americans fit into this target. What we've learned is that if the target that we build is smaller than 20 million people, there's not enough volume, there's not enough people, we're not going to get respondents to your commercial. If it's over 40 or 50 million people, what we've learned is that we're no longer talking to a target, we're just talking to people. So we try and develop targets that sit between 20 and 40 million people. That doesn't mean that there's only 20 to 40 million people that could potentially buy the product. Obviously, it could be a lot larger, but what it does is we look at what media the target consumes, time of day, things like that. It allows us to get to what we call the lowest hanging fruit. We're going to get a lot more sales from people outside the target, but the ideal target size we find is in that 20 to 40 million dollar range. So I want to play a little game, and this really just illustrates highlights the value of demographics. So using demographics, which is the traditional media target, if I'm looking for someone young, Y7, under 10, female, Caucasian, with a high household income, so over $150,000, which is a very high household income, did I just describe Suri Cruise or Honey Boo Boo? Well, from a demographic perspective, I just described both. But if I now attack it as a psychographic perspective, and I say I want to find someone that lives in a rural area, someone that's above average in weight, now we have a very clear understanding, and what we're going to find is we're going to find Honey Boo Boo. Why is that important? Well, it's important if it's important to your product. If I'm launching a soft drink for kids, a highly caffeinated soft drink for children, I'm going to want to find Honey Boo Boo, not Suri Cruise, because Suri Cruise is going to want the fresh squeezed, organic, raw, kombucha, whatever is important to her family. The next step to look at eliminating is the media variable. So what can we learn about media, again, before we start to spend any media dollars? And what we want to do is focus on areas where this target that we've already developed is most likely to consume media. So the question is, how does your target consume media? Are they heavy TV watchers? And if they're heavy TV watchers, when do they watch TV? What programming do they watch? Those are important questions. Are they heavy radio listeners? If they're heavy radio listeners, what formats do they listen to? Are they country music? Are they talk? Are they news? Are they business? And this is all information that we learn through the combination of demographic and psychographic. Do they read a lot of print? And if they read print, are they newspaper readers? Are they magazine readers? And if they're magazine readers, what title? There's a very big difference between a Sports Illustrated reader and a Vanity Fair reader, and not all print is relevant to your target. I'm going to illustrate the rest of this with television and really specifically cable. It tends to be the easiest way to talk about it. And with the example I want to give is with cable, and it's VH1 Classic. So we were doing some buying for a weight loss product. And when we looked at specifically demographics, again, it was women, primarily women, 35 to 54, income of 60,000 plus because the product wasn't super cheap. But when we pulled the demographic information like that, we get a suite of stations that's going to work for them. And in that suite of stations was VH1 Classic. When we started to look at qualifiers, and the qualifier that we almost always look at as a primary qualifier for a weight loss is, are you unhappy with your weight? Because just because someone's overweight doesn't necessarily mean that they're unhappy with their weight. So when we layer in if they're unhappy with their weight, the media index for VH1 Classic went through the floor. So what that told us is, while we may sit with a station pool of 15 or 20 stations that make a lot of sense for the demographic, when we look at the habits of the watchers of these particular TV networks, it can continue to whittle down and eliminate network selection. The final thing to talk about is competitive. Now, I want to be careful with competitive. Everybody loves competitive. It's actually very sexy intel that we can provide to our clients. We find it's really just directional. If I would put a number on it, it's really only about 10% of the information that we use. The deal with competitive is it's about how much they spend, where they spend it, and allocation. The key for us is to look at the trending. Are they on a network where they are continually spending up, and it clues us in that they are working there? Is it something where they're trending down their spend on a network, and it starts to tell us that maybe it stopped working? But also, a real key is seasonality. Do they only air in cold weather months? Do they stop airing in April and start airing again heavily in November? Are there spikes in trending? So it starts to tell us what your competitors feel the seasonality of a similar product or your product is. What this all boils down to is, using these three things, we're able to deliver your message to Honey Boo Boo and not necessarily Suri Cruise. So what's the big takeaway from this? The big takeaway from this is that by using a combination of demographics, psychographics, and competitive research, we can pull a lot of intel out and create a lot of good direction and efficiency in a media test, even before you spend $1 on your media. Thank you.